All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is Daily Vlog 2025, number 1 to 10. And today, I needed a drink. So, today, if you guys have been paying attention on the interwebs, last week somebody went to this developer's website and was able to inspect the page. Not like super secret, like hacking. Oh, I'm behind the firewall. No, they basically just hit F12 to inspect element. Discovered that the page itself didn't really have any like security or anything. It was like a basic WordPress, and started looking through files and found a bunch of files for an Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion remaster. And certain corners of the internet have been abuzz about this remaster. Apparently, according to rumors, it's going to shadow drop tomorrow, which is an interesting choice. I would think something like this, you would want to market it and things like that. Putting it out as a shadow drop is a very interesting marketing choice, so whatever. But, like, I've seen the screenshots and stuff like that. It looks like this is a real thing. I have no idea if it's actually going to shadow drop tomorrow or not, or if we're even going to see it completed. Because again, all we've seen thus far is a few screenshots and then some kind of promo artwork, which is stuff that you would have if you were going to be launching a full game. And it's also stuff you would have if you were pitching a proof of concept. So it's theoretically possible that this is never going to be a thing, but all signs point towards, let's see what happens tomorrow. It got me thinking, though. Currently, there is no Elder Scrolls TTRPG, which I find fascinating. Again, the Elder Scrolls now is considered one of the premier video game RPG series ever. Like, Morrowind was amazing. Daggerheart was absolutely fine, but it didn't really catch on that much. Mostly because Daggerheart in and of itself was just an overly ambitious game. It pulled it off relatively well, but the game is so massive and there's so much to it that I think most people just kind of bounced off of it. And Arena, which I believe was the first Elder Scrolls game, is nothing like modern Elder Scrolls. But Morrowind, probably because it was available on consoles in addition to computers, really kind of defined what most people considered a Western RPG. And the thing about Western RPGs, or at least the distinction that used to be the difference between JRPGs and Western RPGs, was JRPGs tended to be not really linear, but very, very kind of story focused. They tended to be turn-based, and you basically played pre-written characters through a pre-written story, whereas Western RPGs were more defined as kind of more open-ended. You would create your own character. You could choose your way through the story that you want. You know, all the things that Morrowind did really, really well. If anyone has never played Morrowind, you start off coming off of a prison ship, effectively, just getting your freedom and being dropped off in Vardenfell. which is the ancestral home of the Dark Elves in the Elder Scrolls setting. Or no, you're not dropped off in Vardenfell. You're dropped off somewhere within Morrowind. Vardenfell, if I remember correctly, is just the capital city. All right. So anyway, so Morrowind, you got to build your character, and then once you got dropped off here, you would have to register, and registering with someone there basically is how you built your character. And then they just let you go. Like there is a main plot to follow in Morrowind, but there's absolutely no obligation to follow it in any way, shape, or form. You can literally just wander around Morrowind killing shit and going into caves and have a very, very fun playthrough and create your own story. And that kind of became what most people considered the Western RPG. It's kind of open-ended. I get to build my own character and I get to explore this world as me. And then Oblivion defined it a little bit more, and then we have Skyrim, which has been re-released more times than the Beatles albums have. And the real mark of a console now is how many versions of Skyrim there are on it. But the idea behind, a Western RPG, the idea of, you're not limited by this is where the story wants you to go or anything like that, is very indicative of how TTRPGs have always worked. Again, when you look at real old school TTRPGs like D&D Basic and First Edition, stuff like that, and how adventures were designed, they actually weren't that far off from the JRPGs that were inspired by them. Things like, a lot of people don't remember that Final Fantasy was a Dungeons and Dragons ripoff. Like 100%. They even had Dungeons and Dragons monsters that they had to rename because they took them directly from D&D. Things like Mind Flayers. Yeah, they're there. Final Fantasy heavily took inspiration from Dungeons and Dragons. When you look at how you play Final Fantasy, you go to a city which sends you to a dungeon. You do a dungeon crawl, kill a boss, come back, go to the next city that points you to a dungeon, do a dungeon crawl. I mean, that was D&D in its heyday. But as the game began to evolve, you started getting more kind of open-ended things. Again, we can go to Keep on the Borderland, which was still a dungeon crawl. It was multiple dungeon crawls, but the wilderness exploration aspect of it was unique. And then we go to things like Ravenloft. Ravenloft was very heavily story-based. And then we go to things like the Temple of Elemental Evil, and that was, yes, it was a dungeon crawl, but it encouraged you to make your own choices and kind of play the game the way you want to. And while, yes, it was a very, very large dungeon, you could explore it any way you wanted to in any order. And so I went, wow, you know what? Elder Scrolls TTRPG, it's probably super fun to play. And I realized there isn't one. And that kind of blew me for a loop, because especially when you look at Skyrim, like Skyrim is a TTRPG. Like when you look at everything you can do in it, like it feels very TTRPG-esque. And again, they've re-released the game 400 times. You would think they'd figured out, maybe we should make a TTRPG out of this. Now, there is an unofficial Elder Scrolls TTRPG, but it's a 5e conversion. So it's built using the 5e SRD, and it's a class-based TTRPG, which is perfectly fine. I like class-based TTRPGs, but Elder Scrolls has never been class-based. in certain Elder Scrolls games, you can start off with a class, like with Oblivion. When you're building your character, one of the ways you can build is you can actually choose a class. But all that does is it defines your major and minor skills. And the purpose of major and minor skills is once you get enough levels in your major skills, you level up. And the amount of additional attribute points that you could get is based entirely on which major skills you leveled up and which minor skills you leveled up. And so, at least in the original Oblivion, knowing how to level up your character was really important because the world leveled up with you. And if you leveled up your character and you only leveled your major skills, you didn't do anything your minor skills, your level ups would be really, really small as far as your attributes. And the enemies would start one-shotting you because they would get better level ups than you would. But Morrowind and Oblivion and Skyrim are all skill-based RPGs, meaning that the way that you create and kind of define your character is through the skills you choose, not the class you define not your class. And even if you look at Elder Scrolls Online, while yes, it does have a class system, especially once they added in scribing, they're now adding subclasses to Elder Scrolls to where you can actually replace one of your skill lines with a skill line from a completely separate class and basically make your own classes. So it's getting very, very close to being a completely classless RPG. But even with the classes, like you still, because you can get all these other skills from your weapon choice, from the various like guilds and stuff like that, you really can make your own character, and your class is really just a suggestion in that. So I got to thinking, if I were to run an Elder Scrolls RPG, what current RPG system would I use? Because designing a brand new system for the Elder Scrolls Online, it would be a great thing to do. It's not something I'm doing. Designing skill-based RPG systems is unbelievably difficult. It takes a ton of playtesting. I'm not going to do that. But I did think it'd be interesting to kind of look through the various RPGs I know and the various RPGs I'm aware of and figure out which one would fit the Elder Scrolls. So I have a couple of ideas for RPGs that I think would fit the feeling of the Elder Scrolls. So I thought they would make a fun video. So, and I'm going to go for basically from the ones I think least fit, but still kind of fit in there, to the one that I think would be the best fit. So, for the one that fits the least, but I still think works pretty well, the Fantasy Age system by Green Ronin, I think could be used pretty well to create an interesting Elder Scrolls-like adventure for a couple of reasons. While Fantasy Age is class-based, it's not 100% class-based. Like, there's only, quote-unquote, 3 classes. You have Mage, Rogue, Warrior. And the things that define your character are going to be your skills and your focuses. There we go. Your focuses and your specializations, which are basically subclasses. But you can actually mix and match multiple subclasses to kind of create your character. So the age system in and of itself does have a kind of wide variety of abilities, and because a wide variety of characters, and because of the ability focus system, it does feel somewhat and the talent system. It does feel somewhat more quote unquote skill based than a pure class based game. Like as you level up, picking the right talents is what's going to kind of define your character a lot more than, oh well, I'm a warrior. So I think if I wanted to uh, make an Elder Scrolls TTRPG, I could do it with the Fantasy Age system. It would be a little weird, but I think I could make it work. Because in practice, when you're playing an Elder Scroll game, even though it is completely classless, you're still, as you kind of level up and stuff, you're still going to be making your own class. Like, if you're going to be a weapon-based character, you're going to be taking most of the weapon-based things. You're probably going to be ignoring most of the magic stuff. Same thing if you're going to be a magic-using character, you're going to focus a lot more on the magicka side of stuff versus the kind of weapon and armor kind of stuff. So, I could see the Fantasy Age system working relatively well to make that. Does that make sense? Moving on. The next system that I think might work relatively well for an Elder Scrolls campaign. Savage Worlds gave me a lot of kind of Elder Scrolls vibe. And the reason being, Savage Worlds in and of itself is a classless system. And the way that you kind of create your character is you start with your concept, then you choose your race, which is, again, they call it ancestries in this. But basically, your race, your whatever, species, ancestries, whatever you want to call it. And then you start picking what are called hindrances, which are basically things that your character does poorly. And depending on how many hindrances you take, you can get additional skill points, or you can get an edge, which allows you to do even more kind of cool stuff. So your skills are exactly that. They're the kind of raw numbers for doing various things. But the edges are the things that let you do kind of interesting things. Like, to give you an example, give me an edge. Those are hindrances. I don't want hindrances. I want an edge. Skills. All right, so edges. So, like, one of the edges is ambidextrous. Your warrior is as deft with his left hand as his right. He ignores the offhand penalty. If holding a weapon in each hand, ambidextrous characters may stack parry bonuses from both weapons. So your edges are kind of like feats in 5th edition, and they allow you to kind of customize your character. So most definitely, the Savage Worlds system does lean towards that. You can kind of define your own character. And the only thing that's going to limit you on things like your the edges you can take and things like that is, like, for arcane resistance. In order to be able to take that, you have to have a spirit score, which is one of your attributes, effectively, of a D8 or higher. So the thing that's going to prevent you from getting higher edges that allow you to kind of define your character is going to be entirely based on your attributes, which is very Elder Scrolls-esque. Like, if we look at Skyrim, the thing that stops you from getting more powerful destruction skills is your actual destruction level. And the more you use destruction spells, the better it's going to get. This one doesn't technically work in the idea of the more you use it, the more powerful it gets. It's your standard TTRPGs. When you level up, you get to choose where to allocate stuff. But I think it works relatively well, and this one is completely classless. There are no classes in this. It is entirely kind of skill-based, or we can call it edge-based in this one. So yeah, I think Savage Worlds, and it does have that fantasy vibe to it, though one of the Savage Worlds kind of default campaign settings is kind of a Weird West setting. If you're not familiar with that term, it's basically the Wild West, or the American Wild West, with revolvers and cowboys and stuff like that. But there's also magic and occult stuff in there as well. So they call it Weird West. And it's an entire genre, and I love it. I think it's super, super cool. Yeah. Moving on. I'm not going to say this one I think fits better than Savage Worlds, but I have to mention it, and so I'll kind of put it in the same area as Savage Worlds. We got to talk about GURPS. If anyone is unfamiliar with GURPS, GURPS stands for Generic Universal Role-Playing System. And if you've ever thought that the tabletop RPG you're playing isn't complicated enough, pick up a GURPS book. You will very quickly go, no, this is perfectly fine. I don't want to see that again. I joke, I do know quite a few people that absolutely love the GURPS system, but it is by far the crunchiest tabletop RPG to ever exist. Basically, when you're creating your character, you have a set number of points that you can use to basically buy a bunch of traits for your character. However, there are positive and negative traits. So if you have kind of an idea for a character, but you don't have quite enough points to be able to build that character or make them viable, then you can take some negative traits to offset the fact that you want to spend more points than you actually have. The system itself, like I said, is extremely complex. It is completely classless. And because, again, it's designed to be a generic, universal role-playing system, there are so many supplements for it. I think the current version of GURPS, or at least the one that I own, and I think it's the most current one, is the 4th edition of GURPS. And when you are getting ready to play a GURPS game, the first thing that you have to do is have the game master define which supplements they're going to use in this one, because there's just that many, and allowing certain rules or not allowing other rules. Like, again, because that generic universal thing, it's designed to let you be able to play everything from like your high fantasy to, space opera, to Weird West, to cosmic horror, to detective noir. Like, it's designed to be able to do all of that. I don't think it does all of those things well, because, again, it's just so complicated that things get very, very confusing very, very quickly. But because of that, you most definitely can create an Elder Scrolls-like experience. Years and years and years ago, I actually played in a GURPS game. I think the campaign lasted for like 3 or 4 sessions, and I checked out because in those 3 or 4 sessions, first of all, I got to do next to nothing, which really, really annoyed me, just because the people that I was playing with were knew each other really, really well, and had known each other a lot longer than me. I only knew the game master because he and I used to be kind of close. No idea what happened to the dude. Like, he just stopped following me on Twitter one day, and we have not spoken since. But when I was building my character, I said, you know what I want to be? I want to be this guy that dual wields rapiers. At that point, I was really into dual wielding. And he goes, no. This is going to be a historically accurate game. And so, combat, you can't dual wield rapiers. I'm like, yeah, you can. Like, that's a real thing. No. Dual wielding has never been used because one of the players, what I think they still might be making videos, was one of those like weapon expert, historical weapon expert people, and for a long time, their favorite thing to talk about was, yeah, dual wielding is a complete fallacy. It has never happened in real life. It's just something that was made up for video games and tabletop RPGs. No one has ever dual wielded in history ever, which is a complete lie. We have tons and tons and tons of examples of people using a weapon in each hand, both in dueling and on the battlefield. Samurai specifically were trained in how to use either a katana and wakizashi or a wakizashi and tanto paired together. In fencing, the Florentine style of fencing actually uses two rapiers, and was considered one of the most important styles of fencing to learn after learning single rapier. So anyway, I got sick of it, and I just hated how crunchy the system was, and how the system was so complex that it felt like I had to fight the system in order to do it. However, if you're willing to put the effort and the time to learn the system, which will take you a while, it is generic universal role-playing system. You can mold it and force it into the shape that you want, which you could use to emulate the Elder Scrolls. In my personal opinion, I think it would be easier to just learn how to code and then recreate the entirety of Skyrim to be able to run on a smartwatch. But you do you. Moving on. The final RPG that I'm going to talk about for today is kind of my go-to RPG if I want a classless tabletop RPG, and that is Open Legend. If you're unfamiliar with Open Legend, it was kickstarted years ago. Both Ed Greenwood and Matt Mercer consulted on it, and on the Kickstarter page, they actually had their pictures on there to show, yeah, Matt Mercer likes it, and so does Ed Greenwood. If you're not familiar, you should know Matt Mercer. If you're not familiar with the name Ed Greenwood, he's the creator of the Forgotten Realms. He's also a published author. He's a super, super cool dude as well. I've met him once, and he is absolutely as personable as he appears when you see him in interviews and things like that. He's just really, really a nice dude. Open Legend is a classless RPG. When you create your character, you have this list of... I'm just going to open it up here because I can't remember what they call them anymore. You have this list of attributes. And the attributes are... agility, fortitude, might are the physical attributes. They're exactly what they sound like. Agility, might, big swingy things. Fortitude, how much can I take? Then you have your mental attributes, learning, logic, perception, and will. So learning is like your smarts, or remembering stuff. Logic is critical thinking. Perception, sounds about right. Observing stuff. Will, your mental fortitude. Social attributes, deception, persuasion, and presence. One of my favorite things about this system is the presence is both like your ability to kind of influence other people, and just if you're lucky. Like, you can build a presence-based character who isn't actually good at anything. He's just super, super lucky. Total, like, long shot style KKK character. And then you have the extraordinary attributes, which are alteration, creation, energy, entropy, influence, movement, prescience, otherwise called prescience, and protection. And basically, those are anytime you want to do something that a normal, regular human being wouldn't, you would put points into one of those and kind of explain, like if you want to be a spellcaster that specializes in elemental spells, fireballs, ice storms, lightning bolts, all of those you would use energy. And so when you build your character, you invest points in these various attributes. And as you invest points, the die that you roll when you make a roll using that attribute gets bigger. I think they started at D6. Yeah. Oh, no. Goes D4, D6, D8, D10, 2D6, 2D8, 2D10, 3D8, 3D10, 4D8 if you can get it up to level to 10. So very much this is skill based. As you level up, you are able to put your points into any attributes you want, and the lower the attribute score, the easier it is to level up with your points. So like going from a 0 to a 1 only takes 1 point. So if you just want to have a little bit of energy manipulation power, you can just give yourself a 1 in it, and boom, you have a tiny amount of energy manipulation that you can do, and you define it by defining your character. So it does very much kind of fit into how a lot of people play Elder Scrolls games, where they'll kind of ignore an attribute until it becomes important, and then they'll hyper fixate on it for a little while. Like the first time you realize that, oh, even though I'm not a stealth archer and I'm a magic user, stealth is still really, really useful. So maybe I'll invest a little bit more in my stealth skills. The other way you kind of build your character is you have these things called feats. It's not letting me go back to table of contents. There we go. So feats is the chapter 4. This is really poorly bookmarked. So feats are, again, just kind of other ways to kind of customize your character. They work very similarly to how in Skyrim the constellations and stuff like that start making the same abilities that everybody has access to just work better for you. Like one of my favorite feats, because I built a character around this, is called Attack Redirection. It requires some other feats before you can get to it, specifically Defensive Reflexes level 2. But the way that it works, when you make a defend action and your roll exceeds the attacker's action roll, you can choose to redirect the attack to a target that is neither you nor the attacker. The original attacker's roll does not change, only the target. So you can boom and kind of throw the attack at someone else. Yeah, it's a super fun feat to use. And so with a combination of the attributes and feats and what they call the Bane and Boon system, which is basically when you roll high enough or when you have attributes of a certain level, you can invoke a Bane or a Boon. A Bane is a debuff, a Boon is a buff. And so because of that, you can really create any kind of character that you want. And very similar to how it works in the Elder Scrolls, as you play more, you can realize that, hey, my character uses these skills more, so I'm going to start investing in those as opposed to these other ones. Like a really good example, we had this dude named Lex, still plays in my Zelda. Oh, I used Open Legend was the system that I used for my first Zelda RPG on Zelda Universe. I believe the entirety of that campaign should be on the Zelda Universe YouTube channel now. So you used to have it all on the Twitch channel, and then the whole Twitch, you're only allowed to have 100 hours of stuff on there thing happen. So I believe it should all be on the Zelda Universe YouTube channel. If you just go to the playlists, this series is called Realms of the Wild. But one of the players, guy's name is Lex, created this Rito bard effectively. That the original intention of the character was to be a very kind of rogue bard-esque character. He had this cool accordion that the handles actually hid Ulak daggers, like what Riddick uses in the Chronicles of Riddick, those cool like curvy daggers. Like he had those, and so they were basically what he used to hold his accordion. Well, one time when they leveled up, he wasn't kind of looking too closely, and he meant to increase his presence because, again, as a bard, he liked to kind of influence people and things like that. But he misclicked and actually put points into prescience or prescience, which is basically the ability to kind of like remote view and stuff like that. And so just because he did it, and he's like, wait a minute, when did I get prescience? We're like, prescience? Oh, prescience. Yeah, that's like remote viewing and psychic and seeing the future and stuff like that. It's it's kind of psychic abilities that aren't telekinesis. He's like, oh, I guess I'm going to use that. And his character started changing simply because, well, I did it and I have it on my character sheet. I might as well use it. And so, yeah, he became this kind of seer style character that was super freaking cool. So, yeah, I think Open Legend, if you're going to make an Elder Scrolls RPG and you want it to feel like an Elder Scrolls game, I think it's really hard not to go with Open Legend unless you're actually creating an Elder Scrolls TTRPG. Just because, again, so much of Open Legend lends itself to that feeling of you can do what you want, you can build your character the way you want, and as you use your stuff more, you can choose to make that stuff get better. Yeah, I genuinely, like, I've been itching for a little while now to play Open Legend again because it's been, oh man, it's been over 2 years now since Realms of the Wild ended, because we ended in like early January of, is it 2023? I guess it had to have been. Yeah, because we started in 2017. So yeah, early 2023, and I'm kind of jonesing for another Open Legend game. It was, oh man, it's so much fun, and even right from level 1. Just because of how the system is worked, you feel powerful. Like a level 1 D&D character, you kind of feel like, oh, I'm going to be cool eventually. Level 1 Open Legend character, you feel cool right from the beginning. So, anyway, interested to hear from you guys. If you guys wanted to run an Elder Scrolls campaign, what system would you use? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, it's going to be all for me today. I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.